The clock on my microwave said 11:47 when I played it back for the third time. Not because I'd misheard it. Because some part of me needed to hear it again, just to be sure I hadn't imagined the tone in her voice. The voicemail wasn't meant for me. Melissa had meant to send it to her sister, Rachel, and instead her thumb had landed on my name in her contacts list. The two of us sitting right next to each other alphabetically like a joke only fate would think was funny. Her voice was light. Casual. The kind of casual you use when you think no one who matters is listening. "She's basically the free babysitter at this point," she said, and I heard Rachel laugh on the other end. "Honestly, we won't need her much longer." I set my coffee cup down so carefully it didn't even click against the saucer. Then came the number. $41,000. The down payment I'd handed my son and his wife in 2019, back when I still believed family helped each other without keeping score. "That was 6 years ago," Melissa said. "Ancient history." She acts like it means something. I sat very still in my kitchen, in the house I'd lived in for 34 years, and listened to a woman explain to her sister exactly how little I meant to her. I didn't cry. I didn't call my son. I opened my laptop instead, and started looking for a folder I hadn't touched in 6 years. Welcome back to the channel, where we tell the stories of women who were underestimated by the people who should have known better. If you've ever been dismissed by your own family and had to prove your worth in silence, you're in the right place. Subscribe now because what Eleanor found in that folder changed everything, and you won't want to miss it. To understand why that number mattered so much, you need to know who I used to be before I was anyone's grandmother. For 31 years I worked in numbers. I started as a bookkeeper at a small parts distributor in 1985, the kind of job where you learn to catch a misplaced decimal before it became somebody's problem. By 1994, I'd moved into the in-house accounting department at Halloran Manufacturing, a mid-size operation outside of Dayton that made components for industrial cooling systems. I stayed there for 22 years, working my way up to senior accountant, reconciling ledgers, managing accounts payable, and sitting in on audits where men twice my size in suits would ask me to explain slowly why the numbers didn't lie even when people wanted them to. I retired in 2016, the year after my husband Walter passed. 31 years of paperwork, and not one discrepancy with my name attached to it that I didn't catch myself first. Walter used to tease me about it constantly. He'd find receipts from restaurants filed by date in a shoebox in the hall closet, warranty cards for appliances we no longer owned, a folder labeled just in case, that he swore was thicker than our wedding album. "Eleanor," he'd say, shaking his head, "you'd notarize a grocery list if they let you." I'd tell him someone in this family had to remember things on paper, because memory alone was never something I trusted to hold up in a disagreement. That habit is exactly why, in the spring of 2019, when Daniel and Melissa came to me asking for help with a down payment on their first house, I didn't just write a check and wish them luck. I loaned them $41,000, and I told them gently but firmly that we were going to do it properly. Not a handshake, not a verbal promise at Sunday dinner. I sat both of them down at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd later hear that voicemail, and I explained that we'd draw up a promissory note, have it notarized, and record a deed of trust against the property with the county. Daniel rolled his eyes a little. Melissa said it felt very formal for family. I told them formal was exactly the point, that clear paperwork protects relationships, it doesn't threaten them. At the time, I thought I was protecting all of us from the kind of misunderstanding that quietly ruins families. I had no idea I was protecting myself from something else entirely. Somewhere in the 6 years after that loan, I became something else in that family. Not just grandma, a fixture. Every weekday morning, I was at their door by 7:15, coffee still in the travel mug Walter gave me the Christmas before he died. Ava was 5 when I started, Noah was 3. I packed their lunches, drove them to school, picked them up again, and had dinner on the table most nights before Daniel and Melissa walked in from work, tired and grateful in the way people are grateful for something they've stopped noticing. Nobody ever asked if Tuesday worked for me. Tuesday simply belonged to them, the same as Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. If I had a doctor's appointment, it got moved. If I was tired, I didn't mention it. On the surface, everything looked warm. Melissa hugged me at the door. Daniel called me a lifesaver at every family gathering, usually right before asking what time I could be there the next morning. Birthday cards, Mother's Day brunches, The appearance of closeness was never missing. But appearances and priority are two different things, and somewhere along the way I'd stopped being asked and started being assumed. I was the person who showed up, who never said no, who filled whatever gap needed filling, reliable in the particular way that people stop being grateful for once they've come to expect it. I told myself that was just what family did for each other. I was about to learn Melissa didn't see it the same way. I went back and played the whole thing from the start, because by then I needed to hear every word in order, not just the ones that had already lodged themselves under my skin. "Rachel, hi, it's me," Melissa said, her voice easy, unguarded, the way people sound when they think the only audience is family. "I have to tell you what's happening. Daniel got the promotion. The one in Charlotte." Rachel's voice, farther from the phone, said something congratulatory I couldn't quite make out. "I know," Melissa said. "It's a big jump. But honestly, part of me is relieved for a whole other reason." "What reason?" "We won't need Eleanor hovering anymore." I remember setting my hand flat on the table, just to feel something solid. "She's basically the free babysitter at this point," Melissa went on, and I heard the smile in it, easy and careless. 5 days a week for years. I love that she loves the kids, don't get me wrong. But it's a lot. It'll be nice to just reset. Have our own life. Won't she be upset? Moving them that far? Maybe a little. But she'll get over it. A pause, then a small dismissive laugh. She thinks that loan makes her family, you know? Like it's some big thing hanging over us. The house money. $41,000. From 2019. Melissa said the number the way you'd mention an old parking ticket. That was 6 years ago, Rachel. Ancient history. She acts like it means something, like we owe her, I don't know, a say in things. She should be grateful we still let her see the kids as much as she does. Rachel said something I didn't catch. Melissa laughed again, softer this time, already moving on to a different subject, the sale of the house, a moving company she'd found online, whether Charlotte school started before or after Labor Day. The message ended on its own mid-sentence, the way voicemails do when the person forgets they're still talking. I sat there in my kitchen with the phone in my hand and didn't move for a long time. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't call Melissa. I didn't cry, though I want to be honest that some part of me expected to. What I felt instead was quieter than that and colder. 6 years of 7:15 mornings. 6 years of dinners on the table. And in her own words, spoken to her sister when she thought no one else could hear, I wasn't family. I was a convenience she was finally free of. I set the phone down on the table, face down, and let the kitchen go silent around me. Every instinct I had wanted to pick up that phone and call Daniel right then at midnight, and ask him if he knew what his wife really thought of me. I wanted to hear him stumble through an answer. I wanted Melissa to know that I knew. But I didn't move. Walter used to say it to me during every hard negotiation of our life together. The mortgage refinance in '98, the dispute with his brother over their mother's estate, the year I almost quit my job over a boss who took credit for my work. "Never negotiate with your voice shaking, Eleanor," he'd say. "The moment they hear you upset, they stop hearing what you're actually saying." I'd built a career on that principle. I wasn't about to abandon it in my own kitchen at midnight, over people who clearly weren't going to give me the dignity of an honest conversation. So I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry into the phone or rehearse what I'd say at the next family dinner. Instead, I got up, walked down the hall to the spare room, and opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet I hadn't touched since 2019. If they thought that loan was ancient history, I wanted to see it again for myself. The folder was exactly where I'd left it, tucked behind the tax records from 2018, labeled in my own handwriting. Daniel and Melissa, Home Loan 2019. I sat down on the floor of that spare room, the way I used to sit with Ava when she was small enough to want me at her level, and I laid the contents out in front of me one piece at a time. The promissory note came first, 4 pages, notarized on March 14, 2019, spelling out the $41,000 I'd loaned them for the down payment on the house on Birchwood Lane. My signature. Their signatures. The notary's raised seal still crisp after 6 years. Underneath it was the deed of trust, recorded with the county recorder's office that same spring, giving me a legal claim against the property until the loan was satisfied. And then near the bottom of the folder was the piece I hadn't thought about in years, a satisfaction of lien form. A document meant to formally release my claim against the house once the loan was fully repaid. Blank. And signed. Never filed. I sat very still, running the timeline back through my head. They'd made payments for the first 2 years, sporadic ones, and then the payments had simply stopped the way things do when nobody's keeping score anymore. Except I had kept score. I just never called it in. Which meant that somewhere in the county records my name was still attached to that house. Not as a formality. Not as a sentimental gesture from 6 years ago. As an active, legally recorded lien. If that document was still valid, this wasn't just an old favor anymore. It was leverage. I want to know what you think happens next. Drop a comment below with your guess, and hit subscribe if you want to see exactly how Eleanor uses what she just found. I closed the folder, set it on my lap, and picked up the phone to call the one person who could tell me for certain whether I was right. I called the county recorder's office on a Tuesday morning. Right when they opened, the way I used to call vendors first thing when I wanted a straight answer before the day got away from anyone. The clerk who answered was patient enough to walk me through the property records for the house on Birchwood Lane while I sat with a notepad, the same way I'd taken notes through 31 years of audits. The deed of trust was still there. Recorded, active, never released. Exactly what I'd suspected sitting on that spare room floor. That Thursday, I met Barbara for coffee at the place we'd gone to every few weeks since we worked together at Halloran, back before she left accounting for a paralegal certificate and 20 years at a family law office. I laid it out for her plainly. The loan, the recorded lien, the satisfaction form that was never filed. She didn't rush her answer. She turned her cup slowly on the table while she thought it through, the way she always did before saying anything she wasn't willing to walk back. If that lien is still active, she said, they cannot close a sale on that house without dealing with you. Title companies check for exactly this. It doesn't matter what anyone assumed informally. What matters is what's recorded. I asked her what I needed to do next. Request a certified copy, she said. Official stamped, from the recorder's office. Not a printout. Something that holds up. I called back that same afternoon and placed the request, unhurried, giving them my full name, the parcel number, and a callback line, the way I'd once ordered documentation for audits that mattered. Sunday dinner had the same china, the same roast Melissa always made when she wanted the evening to feel effortless, and an announcement neither of them had bothered to prepare me for. We're selling the house, Daniel said, reaching for the potatoes like it was nothing. 6 weeks, maybe less. The Denver offer's too good to pass up. Melissa smiled at the kids, then at me. It'll be good for everyone, honestly. Once we're settled, childcare won't really be an issue much longer. Ava's old enough for the after-school program there anyway. I kept my fork still in my hand. There's a closing company already lined up, Daniel added. Should be quick. Melissa's handled most of it. It's just a formality closing out, Melissa said, glancing at me like she was including me out of politeness rather than necessity. Nothing left to sort out on our end. I looked at her for a moment longer than I needed to, thinking about a voice memo she didn't know I'd heard, and a document with my name on it sitting in a certified envelope on its way to my house. I'd like to look over a few papers before anything's signed, I said, calm, unremarkable, the same tone I'd have used discussing weather. Melissa blinked, clearly not expecting resistance from someone she'd already written out of the equation. Papers? Eleanor, it's really just standard closing stuff. I'm sure it is, I said, and reached for the potatoes myself. I'd still like to see them. The title company's conference room smelled like fresh coffee and new carpet, the kind of room built for good news. Daniel and Melissa sat across from me, already signing initials on early pages, when the closing attorney paused over a printout and frowned. There's an issue, she said. There's an active lien on this property. A deed of trust recorded 2019. It was never released. Daniel looked up. That's not possible. We paid that off. Some of it, I said quietly. Not all of it. And the release was never filed. Melissa's pen stopped moving. Eleanor, this is a formality. We can just. It isn't a formality, I said, sliding the certified copy across the table, the same way I used to slide reconciled ledgers across a desk to men who doubted my math. $41,000, notarized promissory note, recorded lien. Nothing about it expired just because time passed. You can't hold up our closing over this, Melissa said, her voice climbing. I'm not holding up anything, I said. I'm simply not releasing a lien I never agreed to release. No signature, no closing. That's how recorded documents work. I watched something shift behind Melissa's eyes then. Not anger exactly, but recognition. The realization landing slowly that I wasn't reacting to old paperwork. I was reacting to a voicemail she never meant for me to hear. You heard, she said quietly, almost to herself. Every word, I said, and reached for my coffee, my hand perfectly steady. Daniel called me 2 days later alone and apologized in a way that sounded like he meant it. Melissa never did. But something in the house shifted after that. A new carefulness in how they spoke to me. A respect that had been missing for years. I wasn't looking for revenge. I never wanted to punish anyone. I just wanted for once to be seen accurately, not as free help, but as someone whose contribution meant something. I still hold that lien. I'll release it when I'm ready on my terms in my own time. There was one more paper in that folder I hadn't read yet. One that would change things again. Want to know what it said? Subscribe and stay tuned and tell me in the comments what you think it was.